The explosion that rocked the Ural Mountains at 3:47 a.m. on October 15 wasn't supposed to happen. Deep beneath 200 meters of solid granite, in a bunker that officially didn't exist, President Vladimir Putin felt the tremor shake dust from the reinforced concrete ceiling above his head. The emergency lighting flickered, casting eerie shadows across the war room where Russia's most classified operations were planned. But this wasn't an earthquake. Someone had found them. Putin's fingers tightened around the encrypted satellite phone as he barked orders to his security chief. How did they locate us, Volkov? This facility is buried deeper than a grave, shielded from every detection system known to man. The bunker, code-named Fortress Ural, had been under construction for 15 years, carved into the heart of the mountain range that divided Europe from Asia. Its existence was known to fewer than 20 people in the entire Russian Federation. General Alexei Volkov, head of the Presidential Security Service, studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. "Sir, our perimeter sensors are picking up multiple aircraft approaching from the west. They're flying too low for our radar stations to track effectively." The general's weathered face bore the scars of decades in Russian intelligence, but Putin had never seen him look this concerned. "Whoever they are, they know exactly where we are." The bunker had been Putin's ace in the hole, his ultimate insurance policy against the growing threats to his regime. Built with technology stolen from American deep underground military bases, it contained everything needed to run Russia for months during a crisis. Command centers, living quarters, food stores, water recycling systems, and most importantly, direct control over Russia's nuclear arsenal. The facility could house over 300 personnel and had cost the state treasury nearly $4 billion in black budget funding. But that was only the beginning of Putin's problems that night. Colonel Dmitry Kozlov burst through the reinforced doors of the command center, his uniform torn and bloodied. "Mr. President, we have a major security breach. Someone inside the Kremlin leaked the bunker's location. Our communications have been compromised for weeks." Kozlov had been Putin's most trusted intelligence officer, personally responsible for rooting out traitors within the security apparatus. If he was panicking, the situation was far worse than anyone imagined. Putin's mind raced through the implications. Only his inner circle knew about Fortress Ural. The construction had been compartmentalized, with different teams working on separate sections, none knowing the full scope of the project. The final location coordinates were stored in a single encrypted file, accessible only through Putin's personal authorization codes. Someone with the highest level of clearance had betrayed him. The tactical screens around the war room began displaying incoming intelligence reports. Satellite imagery showed unmarked aircraft circling the mountain peaks above them. Ground-penetrating radar signatures suggested the attackers possessed detailed blueprints of the bunker's layout. Most disturbing of all, intercepted radio communications were being conducted in perfect Russian, using current FSB operational codes. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on the emergency frequency," announced Lieutenant Petrov from the communications station. His young face was pale with fear as he adjusted his headset. "They're demanding you surrender within 30 minutes, or they'll detonate charges already placed throughout the upper levels." Putin felt ice form in his chest. "Play the message." A calm, authoritative voice filled the command center, speaking in flawless Russian with a Moscow accent. "Vladimir Vladimirovich, you have built an impressive tomb for yourself. We know about the 3 primary escape tunnels, the backup power systems, and the location of your personal quarters. We also know about the nuclear launch protocols stored in your private safe. You have 30 minutes to emerge peacefully, or we will bury you permanently in your mountain fortress. The transmission ended with a click that echoed through the stunned silence of the war room. Putin's closest advisors exchanged horrified glances. Whoever was attacking them possessed intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain. The bunker's secrets were protected by multiple layers of security, compartmentalized across different intelligence agencies, and known only to Putin's most trusted allies. No one expected what came next. General Volkov's secure phone began buzzing with incoming calls from Moscow. His face grew darker with each conversation, and when he finally hung up, his expression was grim. "Mr. President, I'm receiving reports of simultaneous attacks on 3 other classified facilities. The backup command center in Siberia is under siege. The underground complex near St. Petersburg has gone completely dark. Someone is systematically targeting our most secret installations." Putin realized he was facing a coordinated assault on the very foundations of his power. These weren't random terrorists or foreign agents stumbling upon classified locations. This was a carefully planned operation, executed with inside knowledge and unlimited resources. Someone within his own government was orchestrating a complete takeover. The president activated his direct line to the defense ministry in Moscow. The phone rang once, twice, then connected to a voice Putin didn't recognize. "Good evening, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I regret to inform you that Defense Minister Shoigu is currently unavailable. In fact, most of your cabinet is experiencing similar difficulties reaching their offices tonight." Putin's blood ran cold. Who is this? Someone who has grown tired of your paranoid leadership and destructive decision-making. Russia deserves better than a dictator hiding in underground bunkers while the country burns above ground. Your time is finished. The line went dead, leaving Putin staring at the phone in disbelief. In all his years of political maneuvering, he had never faced a threat this comprehensive. His enemies hadn't just found his secret bunker, they had apparently neutralized his entire power structure simultaneously. Colonel Kozlov was frantically coordinating with the bunker's defensive systems. "Sir, our surface-to-air missiles are operational, but the attack aircraft are staying just outside their effective range. They're using some kind of jamming system that's interfering with our targeting computers." He paused, listening to his earpiece. "And sir, we're detecting seismic charges being placed at multiple points around the mountain. Professional demolition work." Putin walked to the massive steel blast door that sealed the bunker's main entrance. Through the thick reinforced glass, he could see the tunnel stretching into darkness, lit by emergency lighting. Somewhere beyond that tunnel, his enemies were methodically working to either capture or kill him. After decades of eliminating his opponents, Putin was experiencing the terror of being hunted himself. But the Russian president hadn't survived this long by surrendering to pressure. He turned to his security chief with renewed determination. "Volkov, activate Protocol 7. If they want to bury me in this mountain, they'll discover that dead presidents can still launch nuclear missiles." Protocol 7 was Putin's final insurance policy, designed to ensure that anyone who successfully assassinated him would face immediate nuclear retaliation. The system was automated, requiring only Putin's biometric confirmation and a 12-digit code known only to him. Once activated, it would launch Russia's entire nuclear arsenal at predetermined targets across Europe and North America. General Volkov's face went white. "Sir, are you certain? Protocol 7 cannot be reversed once initiated. We're talking about nuclear war. If I'm going to die tonight, I'm taking the world with me," Putin replied with cold certainty. "Let them try to rule over radioactive ashes." As Putin approached the nuclear authorization terminal, alarms began screaming throughout the bunker. The tactical displays showed explosive charges detonating in sequence around the mountain's upper levels. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as the entire facility shook under the controlled demolitions. "They're collapsing the escape tunnels," reported Colonel Kozlov. "We're being systematically sealed inside." Putin's fingers hovered over the nuclear launch console. All he needed to do was place his palm on the biometric scanner and enter the authorization code. In less than 10 minutes, Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles would be streaking toward targets across the globe. The conspiracy that had trapped him in this mountain would trigger World War III. But as he reached for the scanner, the bunker's lights suddenly cut out completely. Emergency power failed to activate. The tactical displays went dark. Even the communication systems died with electronic squeals. In the absolute darkness of the buried command center, Putin could hear only the terrified breathing of his staff and the distant rumble of continuing explosions above them. A new voice spoke from hidden speakers throughout the bunker, clear and calm despite the chaos. "Vladimir Vladimirovich, we have complete control of your facility's electronic systems. Your nuclear authorization codes have been permanently disabled. The world will not burn tonight because of your pride." Emergency lighting finally flickered back to life, revealing that Putin and his staff were no longer alone in the command center. Armed figures in black tactical gear had somehow entered through passages that should have been impossible to access. Their faces were hidden behind military masks, but their movements were professional, disciplined, and utterly confident. The leader of the assault team stepped forward, removing his mask to reveal a face Putin recognized with shock. It was General Boris Petrov, former deputy defense minister, who had supposedly died in a plane crash 6 months earlier. The man Putin had personally ordered eliminated for questioning his military strategies. "Surprised to see me, Vladimir Vladimirovich?" Petrov asked with a bitter smile. "You should have made certain I was actually dead before celebrating my funeral." Putin's mind reeled as he processed the implications. If Petrov had survived the assassination attempt, how many other enemies had done the same? How long had they been planning this elaborate revenge? The president realized he was facing not just a military coup, but a resurrection of every opponent he thought he had destroyed. General Petrov gestured to his team, who began systematically securing the bunker's critical systems. "This facility will serve nicely as a prison, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Deep enough underground that no one will hear you scream, isolated enough that no rescue attempt could possibly succeed. You'll have plenty of time to contemplate the consequences of your paranoid brutality." But Putin wasn't finished yet. Hidden in his personal quarters was a manual override system for the nuclear arsenal, a final failsafe that bypassed all electronic controls. If he could reach it, he could still trigger the nuclear response that would destroy his enemies along with half the world. "You've made one critical mistake, Boris," Putin said with renewed confidence. You think you've neutralized all my options. But this bunker holds more secrets than you realize. As he spoke, Putin slowly backed toward the corridor leading to his private chambers. His hand moved carefully toward the concealed pistol in his jacket, calculating the distance to the hidden nuclear controls. Even if they killed him, he could still activate the manual launch sequence with his dying breath. General Petrov noticed Putin's movement and smiled coldly. Are you thinking about the manual nuclear override in your bedroom safe, Vladimir Vladimirovich? The one behind the false wall, accessible through the bathroom mirror mechanism. Putin's face went pale as Petrov continued. We've been watching you for months. Every secret, every hidden system, every paranoid backup plan. We know them all. The sound of cutting torches echoed through the bunker as Petrov's team began working on Putin's personal quarters. Within minutes, they had located and disabled the manual nuclear controls, permanently severing Putin's last connection to Russia's strategic weapons. You see, Vladimir Vladimirovich, your greatest weakness was never trusting anyone completely. You created so many secret systems and hidden protocols that you never realized how many people were required to maintain them. Engineers, technicians, security personnel, communications specialists. Every single one of them grew to hate you for the paranoid surveillance you subjected them to. Putin sank into a chair, finally understanding the scope of the conspiracy against him. It wasn't just his political enemies or foreign agents. The very people he had trusted to build and maintain his secret empire had turned against him. Every hidden bunker, every classified facility, every backup system had been compromised from within. General Petrov activated a secure communication link, speaking to coordinators around the country. Fortress Ural is secure. Begin Phase 2 of the operation. All remaining Putin loyalists are to be arrested simultaneously. The transition government will be announced within the hour. Putin listened in growing horror as reports came in from across Russia. Military commanders were being detained, FSB chiefs were surrendering without resistance, and government ministers were publicly announcing their support for a new leadership structure. The coup wasn't just targeting him personally, it was dismantling his entire power network in a single coordinated strike. How long? Putin asked quietly. How long have you been planning this? Since the day you ordered my execution, Petrov replied. 6 months to recruit allies, identify weaknesses, and position assets. 3 months to map your secret facilities and infiltrate your security systems. 1 month to coordinate timing and eliminate variables. Tonight was simply the culmination of everything you taught us about paranoid planning. The bunker shook again as the final explosive charges sealed the last potential escape routes. Putin was now buried over 200 meters underground, surrounded by enemies who knew every secret of his hidden fortress. Above ground, his government was collapsing as systematically as the mountain tunnels around him. General Petrov approached the nuclear command console and began entering shutdown sequences for Russia's strategic weapons systems. The world will sleep safely tonight, Vladimir Vladimirovich. Your nuclear threats die with your regime. But Putin had one final card to play. Hidden within his personal effects was a communication device linked directly to military commanders still loyal to him. If he could activate it, he could trigger a counter-coup that would restore his power and eliminate every traitor in the bunker. As Petrov's team continued securing the facility, Putin quietly reached for the hidden communicator. His fingers found the activation switch just as Colonel Kozlov noticed his movement. "General Petrov," Kozlov shouted. "He's reaching for something." Putin activated the device, sending an emergency signal to his most trusted military allies. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the communicator crackled to life with responses from across the Russian military establishment. But instead of pledges of loyalty, Putin heard only laughter. "Did you really think we didn't know about that toy, Vladimir Vladimirovich?" The voice belonged to Admiral Kuznetsov, commander of the Northern Fleet, supposedly one of Putin's most faithful supporters. "We've been monitoring all your secret communication channels for weeks. There are no loyal commanders left. Everyone has chosen the winning side." Putin's hand trembled as the magnitude of his isolation became clear. Every person he had trusted, every system he had created, every backup plan he had developed had been turned against him. The paranoid security measures that were supposed to protect him had instead provided perfect intelligence to his enemies. General Petrov secured the communicator and placed it on the command table. "Your empire was built on fear, Vladimir Vladimirovich. But fear is a temporary emotion. Eventually, people become more afraid of living under your rule than of opposing it. When that balance shifts, even the most powerful dictator becomes helpless." The assault team began preparing to seal the bunker permanently, transforming Putin's secret fortress into his tomb. But as they worked, one of the tactical displays flickered back to life, showing an incoming priority message from an unexpected source. The Chinese embassy in Moscow was requesting immediate contact with the Russian leadership. Beijing had detected unusual military activity across Russia and was concerned about regional stability. More importantly, they were threatening to activate mutual defense agreements if the situation wasn't resolved quickly. General Petrov frowned as he read the diplomatic cable. The coup plotters had focused entirely on domestic threats, but they hadn't considered international complications. China's military support could potentially restore Putin to power, or at minimum create enough chaos to destabilize the new government. "It seems your paranoid alliance building has created one final problem for us," Petrov admitted to Putin. "Beijing won't simply accept a change in Russian leadership without significant guarantees about continued cooperation." Putin managed a weak smile despite his desperate situation. "You may have conquered Russia, Boris, but you still need to manage the world. China, North Korea, Iran, Syria. All the relationships I built over decades of careful diplomacy. Can your revolutionary government maintain those connections while simultaneously prosecuting me as a war criminal?" The question hung in the air as Petrov's team received additional international communications. Multiple countries were demanding explanations for the unusual military activity across Russia. Some were threatening economic sanctions if the situation wasn't clarified immediately. Others were moving their own forces into defensive positions, fearing that Russian instability might spread beyond the country's borders. General Petrov realized that capturing Putin was only the beginning of their challenges. Running Russia required managing complex international relationships that had been carefully constructed around Putin's personal authority. Dismantling his domestic power was relatively simple compared to explaining his sudden disappearance to suspicious foreign leaders. "Perhaps we can reach an accommodation, Vladimir Vladimirovich," Petrov suggested after reviewing the international situation. "A controlled retirement, carefully managed to maintain international stability while removing you from actual power. Putin's eyes gleamed with renewed hope. If the conspirators needed him alive to manage foreign relations, he might still find a way to turn the situation to his advantage. International pressure could potentially force his restoration to power, or at minimum provide opportunities to escape this underground prison. But as Putin began calculating his negotiating position, alarms screamed through the bunker once again. This time, the threat wasn't from above ground. The facility's radiation detectors were registering dangerous levels throughout the lower levels. "Sir, we have a massive radiation leak in the reactor compartment," reported one of Petrov's technicians. "The nuclear power plant that runs this facility has been sabotaged. We have maybe 6 hours before the entire bunker becomes uninhabitable." Putin and Petrov stared at each other in mutual horror. Neither of them had ordered the reactor's destruction. Someone else was playing a deeper game, using the coup as cover for an even more devastating attack on Russian leadership. "Who else knew about this facility?" Petrov demanded. Putin's face went white as he considered the possibilities. The Chinese helped design the reactor systems. The North Koreans provided uranium enrichment technology. Half a dozen foreign intelligence services had pieces of the puzzle. The realization struck both men simultaneously. While they had been focused on their domestic power struggle, foreign agents had been positioning themselves to eliminate both Putin and his potential successors. The radiation leak wasn't an accident or collateral damage from the coup. It was a calculated assassination attempt targeting everyone with knowledge of Russia's most classified secrets. General Petrov grabbed his secure communication device and began issuing evacuation orders. "All teams, prepare for immediate extraction. We have a reactor emergency. This is not a drill." But when the assault teams tried to access the escape routes, they discovered that all the tunnels had been sealed with something more permanent than conventional explosives. The passages were filled with a hardening concrete mixture that would take days to clear, even with heavy equipment. Putin looked around the bunker that had been designed as his ultimate refuge and realized it was about to become his radioactive tomb. "They played us against each other, Boris. While we were fighting for control of Russia, someone else was arranging to eliminate all of us." The radiation levels continued climbing as the reactor's containment systems failed one by one. Putin, General Petrov, and the entire assault team were trapped underground with no escape route and no way to call for help. The communication systems that had been used to coordinate the coup were now useless for requesting rescue. In the growing radioactive contamination of his secret bunker, Putin finally understood the true scope of the game being played. The coup had been allowed to succeed because it would gather all of Russia's key leadership figures in one location, making them easier to eliminate permanently. Whoever had orchestrated this final phase possessed intelligence capabilities that surpassed even Russia's paranoid security apparatus. As the Geiger counters clicked faster and the air itself became poisonous, Putin realized that his greatest fear had finally come true. Not death in battle or assassination by enemies, but disappearing without a trace, buried so deep underground that his body would never be found. The President of Russia would simply vanish, leaving behind only radiation and speculation. General Petrov was frantically working with his technical team to find some way to escape the contaminated bunker. But with each passing hour, their options diminished as the radiation levels continued climbing toward lethal doses. Vladimir Vladimirovich, Petrov said quietly as they waited for death in the depths of the Ural Mountains. I want you to know that this wasn't how we planned to end things. Putin nodded grimly. Whoever orchestrated this was playing a game several moves ahead of both of us, Boris. They let us destroy each other while positioning themselves to inherit whatever was left of Russia. In the final hours, as radiation sickness began affecting everyone in the bunker, Putin and his former enemies worked together desperately trying to identify who had manipulated them into this trap. But the answers died with them in the depths of Putin's secret bunker under the Urals, taking Russia's greatest secrets to their radioactive graves. The bunker that was supposed to protect Russia's leadership instead became their tomb, sealed forever beneath hundreds of meters of stone and concrete. Above ground, the world continued spinning, unaware that an entire government had vanished into the earth, victims of a conspiracy more sophisticated than anything they had imagined possible. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to FictionWire Russia. This is a fictional story created purely for entertainment.